Hi everybody, welcome to this In Conversation series with Sinfonia Cymru. Today I'm talking to violinist Roberto Ruisi. Really happy to be having some brilliant conversations with him. So Robbie, could you just tell us a little bit about yourself and a little bit about the work that you do as a violinist?
Yeah, hi everyone. So I'm a violinist and I've been working with Sinfonia Cymru for only a couple of years, but I've really enjoyed my time and I spend the rest of the time freelancing, working with orchestras, some solo work and a lot of chamber music.
Where have you been spending these last few months, Robbie? Have you been in London or have you been back in Birmingham?
Yeah, I've been in London for the entire time really, which is great, you know. And I've been with my brother for the last 3 months with Alessandro.
Oh, great! Are you guys living together?
We're living together at the moment, which is so I'm keeping him upstairs at the moment. Just, you know. It's been really nice to spend more time, the three of us together, because my other brother is also just down the road, and we don't see this much of each other that much. So nice. It's been really positive in some ways, and we've been able to play together a little bit, you know, do some informal chamber music and stuff like that, which has been really valuable this time. Yeah.
I'm quite jealous. That's the one thing I've really been missing actually, is playing chamber music. I've had a little bit of work over the last couple of months where I've been able to do it again, but there was a good long spell where I was just on my own, practicing on my own, and obviously that has been really valuable as well, you know, having some time to like work on those technical things that are feeling a little bit like rusty, or, you know, getting rid of a bit of tension, trying to kind of work on some stuff I've been wanting to work on for a long time, but I was really missing that chamber music thing. So that's lovely that you've been able to continue doing that. Actually really love, in a lovely way, leads on to kind of my first question, which is that we're both from families where lots of the siblings play music and do it professionally as well. And I just wondered what your experience was of, because I know that you work with your brothers sometimes, what your experiences of working with them was like, and what the positives are of working with family and playing with family.
Yeah, it's a wonderful thing to be able to play with family members. I think you'll agree. You know, it's something like nothing else. You know, and they're not only your colleagues, they're your friends and people that you understand and know so well. It comes with its difficulties at times, especially I was the youngest brother, and I think that for me, watching them grow up and seeing the way that they were turning into these fantastic musicians, but I was always 6 years behind. You know, I definitely wanted to rush and get there and be on that page where we can play together. And we're in that place now, and we play together all the time. So overall, it's amazing. Of course, there are these brotherly spats and these sibling spats. These things can happen, but it's always with the right things in mind. So yeah, it's great.
Absolutely, yeah. It's interesting. You know, I think with the little bits of tension or the little spats that happen, I think it's kind of inevitable. Like, you've got your sibling dynamics that have existed since you were young, and it's very hard. Like, they'll always be there. But I think one of the lovely things is that it doesn't matter like what happens, like, you know that you always love each other, you know that you're always gonna look out for each other. So I suppose it makes, when those things happen, I suppose it's not quite the same as if they were to happen with people who aren't family, because you just have that assurance, don't you, that you're always going to make up, you're always going to love each other.
Yes. Perhaps we can be a little bit more honest at points, which is no bad thing.
Yeah, that's very, very true. Kind of fighting against the British sensibility of being like, oh no, after you. Yeah, I remember actually when we were in Birmingham Junior conservatoire together, I remember so well meeting you for the first time as a little baby. I was same age as Alessandro, so 6, and I have a really strong memory of Jane bringing you in and everyone cooing over you. And it's funny, isn't it, what you remember? But I remember that so well. So yeah, we both studied in Birmingham. We both grew up in Birmingham. We both had the same first violin teacher, Lucy Akehurst, who teaches at the Junior Conservatoire with the Young Strings Project. And, you know, so many of her students, like us, have gone on to have careers in the profession or playing at a really high level as amateurs, you know, doing something else for their profession, but still playing very, very well. What do you think, Robbie, from your experiences, what about her teaching sort of sets her young students on this right track?
I think it's a combination of so many things. I think that she made it enjoyable. You know, we all wanted to do it. We loved going away on the courses that she put together, almost single-handedly at times. And she is so dedicated to her pupils, and still is now. And it's absolutely amazing that she's brought generation after generation of really great players, and if not that, just people who love it so much and are so fond of playing the violin. I think that's one of the most amazing traits she has as a teacher, because we're all still doing it now and still have the same vivacity that we had when we were toddlers, and she did it in a way that never made us want to stop. So I think that would be the thing I'd say about Lucy Akehurst. She's amazing.
Yeah, totally agree. Absolutely incredible woman. And yeah, you're so right. There was always that sense of fun and enjoyment around. And I think a large part of that was right from the beginning, we were all playing together, weren't we? Like, even when we first started, you know, we'd have the string orchestra and the more advanced students would be playing kind of more complex things. But even the beginners were kind of playing the third violin part, like all the open strings. But immediately they were like thrown into that environment of making music with other students and already starting to think about how we relate to each other, you know, whether it's in orchestra or, you know, a same thing with the chamber music groups. She would just kind of plonk everyone in these groups, wouldn't she, and get us all playing together. It sort of feels like so many of her students go on to have careers as like chamber musicians or, you know, high level orchestral players, and that training was there right from the beginning, wasn't it?
Yes.
That we were all doing it together.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it was never solitary, like you say. You know, it was never a practice room in four walls and, you know, you're isolated by yourself. And it was always with other people, and like you said, we're playing from day one with others, and not just one or two, like 100. Yeah. So it is amazing, and you know, it's chamber music. So I guess it kind of makes sense that then we've all kind of gone into that sphere in some ways.
Yeah, I'm just remembering those absolutely mad Suzuki concerts where they're just, exactly as you say, like 100 people on the stage, everyone playing Twinkle Twinkle together. Like, it was just such an amazing thing to have that very regular, massive spectacle of music making performance. Yeah, you're so right, never solitary, always presenting what everybody had been learning to an audience, getting people performing straight away. And I suppose another really wonderful aspect of the Suzuki method is the oral training, and, you know, the fact that we listen, well, back in those days, listening to tapes. I'm not sure many young people would know what a cassette tape is now, but, you know, for us, listening to tapes of all the tunes and getting them in our head before we play. I think it's so interesting, the correlation between that oral training and then how so many of the players are able to be very natural when they play chamber music. And I suppose, you know, that sort of natural ability is also helps people to learn how to, you know, lead and be in principal positions. And I know that's something that you've done a lot of, Robbie. You know, for someone so young, you've had such an amazing amount of experience of leading, you know, whether it's been with your 3 years with NYO or now, you know, you're doing going to lots of different orchestras in the profession. For someone so young, an amazing achievement. What do you love most about that role of being the leader? What do you enjoy most about it?
I think I really enjoy the sense of responsibility that comes with a principal job, a principal role. I think we've always known that strength all the way through sections and is so important. I've always felt most valuable in this scene. It's in some ways it's a much easier job than it is, as to sit at the back. But obviously there are so many things about it that are really important, and it goes beyond just the actual music making. But for sure that this kind of feeling of responsibility is a really nice thing, something I enjoy, get energy from, and it doesn't really feel like a burden.
Yeah, because the word responsibility, exactly, you just said it, someone could interpret it as a burden, but as you say, it absolutely is not a burden in the music making context, because the responsibility is actually you enabling everybody to freely express, right? You're kind of providing people with a structure from which to express themselves, and that's a really wonderful thing to do, isn't it? It feels great to release everybody in the orchestra or everybody in the firsts to really have that freedom of expression, and just give generously from their hearts, give generously with their music making. Do you feel like, Robbie, you've been doing it for a number of years now, do you feel like you have learnt like new things, over the course of the time that you've been leading? Is there anything that you maybe know now that you didn't know when you first started leading?
Yeah, I mean, still learning for sure. Every single time I come into a different orchestra, a different setup, a different group of people, you need to find ways of adapting and how to do that job best. I think you're absolutely right about what you were saying about liberating people, freeing people around you, and I think that's something that as I go on, I'm trying to enable that more, and making others around me feel so comfortable and so able to express themselves in the way that they want to, and that always makes for a great balance, and so that's definitely one thing. We don't want to sort of, be this hardline, dictator. This is not what the job's about. So yeah, learning things all the time.
Yeah, no, that's so true. I think that age is really coming. I feel like it's coming to an end, both in leaders and conductors and teachers. It really feels like people are starting to realise that actually fear is quite a bad motivator, and that actually, especially with music making, it makes people go more in themselves and prevents them from playing with real energy and excitement because they're just scared of doing it wrong. So maybe you'll get a performance that's like super perfect with everything kind of lined up and, all the intonation is there maybe, but it won't really grab you. It's really encouraging actually to see that happening across the profession, like this kind of gradual realization that fear is kind of not very helpful. And it's so wonderful to hear you talking about leading in that way, because, I think the more people that have this philosophy, the more performances we're going to see where everybody exactly feels released to express and no one is kind of afraid.
Absolutely. I think you're right. It's this fearlessness which makes performances so captivating. It's this energy where, it might be on the absolute, on its last legs, and you might be about to fall off a cliff, but you're going for it, and, you're giving everything you possibly can, and, it's going to go one way or another, and let's find out. That's what's so exciting about, spontaneous performance, something that isn't sort of molded, or preconceived. So yeah, I think you're absolutely right.
Absolutely. I love that you're talking about that kind of risk-taking, spontaneous energy. And of course, if people, if you're really taking risks and being spontaneous, then there will be little accidents, like that's the nature of it, right? But if people are feeling that if they make those mistakes or little accidents, that someone's then going to, the conductor or the leader's going to, at the next rehearsal, be like, no, that was awful, wrong. Of course, they're not going to then feel comfortable to do those things. So yeah, you're absolutely right. It's the risk taking is such a huge element of that philosophy, isn't it? Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, it's honest, which is really important.
Yeah, my next question, in some ways it's really related, to this kind of dynamic concert situation, but I'd like to talk to you about how many of us have been made aware in recent months how important it is that conversations about racism and the lack of diversity in classical music are not confined to a moment, but that we're continuing to have these conversations and that we remain committed to really bringing about change. And I was recently listening to some absolutely brilliant online conversations that were hosted by the RNCM Student Union and also their BAME Society. And one of the students during that conversation made a really good point that cross-genre and cross-cultural collaborations just often make both the concert platform and the audiences more closely reflect the diversity of our society. And I know that you regularly perform with the brilliant 12 Ensemble, who have collaborated with a wide range of artists from loads of different genres. And I just wondered, Robbie, from the experiences that you've had, playing in those concerts, what are the benefits of these brilliant collaborations that you've observed, for both players and audiences?
I think that's a really good question, and it's quite nice that we're able to talk about it now. Personally speaking, I've always been really lucky to be part of ensembles who celebrate diversity as part of its nature. With 12 Ensemble or Sinfonia Cymru or Aurora Orchestra, these are all ensembles who absolutely make it their job to celebrate culture of all kinds, and it's a fantastic thing to be part of. It's so great that you're speaking about RNCM having these conversations, and I think it needs to be happening at college level, at high school level, and earlier. And I think that that's the way that in every field, but specifically in our field of the arts, I think that it's just such an important conversation to be had from day one.
Yeah.
And this is this is the thing that I hope is going to come about. And the great thing about these orchestras that I mentioned is that they all have incredible educational outreach programs. I know that Sinfonia Cymru does, because I've been in a few, and it's so great to see the sort of things that we do. It's not just classical music. We try and be as open as possible, as kind of as wide as possible, and I think that it's perfect. And I think the more that we can do of these things, the better.
Yeah, I totally agree. The educational element is so important, and as you say, it's all about having these conversations in every stage, and that's what's going to kind of create change and move us forward. And so the educational element is, of course, the first chapter. And then in some ways, the concert platform is almost like the last chapter, but it doesn't kind of excuse us from, I think a lot of conversations in the past have been, there's been a feeling of an attitude from orchestras and organisations that, if education was different, then it would be different. Like it's, sort of kind of pushing the blame away from themselves a little bit. And yeah, it's great that you're mentioning those groups that are sort of taking it upon themselves to say, no, actually we have a responsibility to also be part of this change. And I've, also done really kind of a lot of variety of projects, these sorts of collaborations with Sinfonia Cymru and also with Manchester Camerata. And there's a few things that I love about them, don't get me wrong, I love classical concert hall tradition. Something about it I find really, really special. I love the quiet hush that comes down on the audience before we start. And I love that people kind of leave that silence in the air sometimes at the end of a concert before clapping, and that people are listening so attentively. But having said that, sometimes it's just so nice, isn't it, in a concert to just kind of just like throw all that away and have a very different vibe. And when you do these different collaborations, you find audiences often are like more involved vocally in what's happening during the gig, and there's kind of a bit more hustle and bustle, and it's really fun, actually, you know, just to feel that different energy in the space. And I've really enjoyed actually cultivating some new skills as well for a lot of these projects, because, you know, I've certainly didn't do very much improvisation when I was at college, or at Chet's, or in my formal musical education. But I'm finding more and more now I have to develop this new skill to kind of actually sort of converse musically with these artists who are coming from different genres. And I wonder, Robbie, have you had any experiences of doing improv, and how have you found it?
Only with a glass of wine very late at night. No, I mean, I love this, like improvisation, for example. It's one of the things that, you know, I sit on the tube or whatever and listen to. You know, it's if I can hear it. I only wish I could do it better. And so, you know, it's been one of my kind of hobbies I've tried to pick up during lockdown, is just picking up different ways of playing, different ways of, you know, expressing what we do outside the classical format that we have been for so many years trained in. And it's, you know, as you know, these things are such different disciplines, and you really have to rewire everything. So it's really fun to do that, a little bit of transcription as well of some improv, to make it playable for somebody very, you know, rigid like me. So it's such a fantastic thing, and I definitely want to do more of it. And it's also a very welcoming thing. And I think you're right about, you know, perhaps the traditional concert format is, I share your love for it, and I think there is something so special about it. But also I think we have both seen that we have to move forward in different ways, as well as keeping this wonderful thing, which I don't think will ever go anywhere.
Yeah.
We do have to find different ways of accessing audiences and people in their daily lives. You know, if they just pop into the shops, you know, and suddenly they hear this, you know, thing that's happening maybe on the street, or whether it's you know, it's amazing. It's amazing. And I hope we can do more and more of that.
I'm so glad that you share my love for the traditional concert situation, as well as all these wonderful new ways of doing things. You know, so often they're put in this kind of battle with each other. It's like either we've got to kind of just do the traditional way, or we have to chuck it all out and then only do this new way. But I think, you know, we can have so much fun and enjoyment of enjoying both these different ways of presenting music. And also I think, you know, the new ways will amazingly influence the old ways. I mean, we all know, don't we, that the kind of musicians of old were kind of normally much more sort of fully rounded maybe than we are now. You know, they would compose as well, they would improvise as well. You know, people like Joachim, you know, Joseph Joachim, who, you know, writing all the cadenzas, improvising for himself, also writing his own music. So, you know, these new ways, they're not really that new actually. So it's kind of quite fun to see those parallels, and that, we can enjoy both elements. I was wondering, you know, over lockdown, I've had loads of time to kind of listen to lots of recordings, and I know you just spoke about being on the tube and listening to some of your favourite music and listening to improvisations. What recordings have you really loved in your time as a player, as a musician, and which artists have you really loved too?
So for sure, it's something that I listen to quite a lot when I'm on the tube. Like I mentioned, is Stefan Grappelli, because he's just such an amazing artist, and his recordings are incredible, and it shows me a complete different way, you know, of playing. But also, I'm in love with orchestral music. I can just sit for hours and listen to Haydn symphony or a Beethoven symphony or some Ligeti or some, you know, and there's something about the power and the sound of an orchestra is so incredible. I've never felt like it's been replicated for me. I do some work with small chamber ensembles. I love it. I do some solo stuff, but really there's nothing like an orchestra for me. And the raw power of it is incredible, and sharing this thing on stage together, especially now, missing it greatly. So that's definitely something that I can, if I've had a rough day or so, it's been a busy one, just smack on some Mahler and just enjoy yourself and, feel it and be there. Yeah.
Great. Robbie, it's been really fantastic to have you come and play with us in Sinfonia Cymru in recent projects. And I was just wondering if you could talk a little bit about your first project with us, the first time you came and played with us, and what you really enjoyed about working with the orchestra.
Yeah, so my first project was for a Carl Jenkins Memorial concert for Aberfan. And we were just there for the day, and I knew many people from the orchestra, just colleagues, but it was so nice to come back. I remember that day saying, well, I'm definitely going to come back and do more. It's actually quite a strange project. Actually, it was a full-size orchestra, and it wasn't really my experiences after. But that sort of made it special too, and I met so many new people, and everybody's so friendly. It was such a nice, relaxed environment to come into, where music making came very easily to everybody. So yeah, and it was a great day for me, really.
And, one of, I think the most recent project that we worked on together was the project with James Crabb, the amazing accordion player. And it was such a pleasure for me well, actually we stood, didn't we? I was about to say sat next to you, but we didn't. We stood for the concert. We got to play together, which was really enjoyable for me because we hadn't really worked together before, even though we knew each other well, and obviously knew each other as children. What do you think were the special things about that particular project, and what do you think the audiences would have really enjoyed?
Well, on a personal level, I was just amazed to learn so much about the accordion. I mean, it was incredible, the kind of things that James was telling us in the concerts. I couldn't believe it. But the great thing about that is that it wasn't just very informative for us, because he was being so generous with his kind of entertaining information in the concert, because I think he probably knew that it's not something that everybody knows about, and was giving sort of just taking a few minutes to explain some things in a really funny way. That was a really nice part of it. And the audiences seemed to love it. It was such a sort of vibrant program. We had loads of tangos, and it seemed to get everybody going. And I don't think we did a single concert where it felt dull, or everything was different each time. It was really fun, really exciting.
Yeah, it was great fun, wasn't it? Really, really brilliant. And yeah, it's so true. He was very, I learned so much about the accordion that week that I didn't know before. It's interesting with the concerts where maybe it's a little bit different to usual. I remember talking to my father-in-law who came to our last concert, and before he came, he was like, oh, the accordion, I'm not sure. Sometimes people have an image in their mind of what the accordion means. And then after the concert, he was absolutely buzzing. He was just like, oh, that was amazing. I didn't know the accordion could be played like that, so virtuosically and such amazing sound. It just kind of made me think there's so many situations like this, aren't there, where we kind of want our audiences to take a little bit of a risk in coming. It might not be something that they're used to seeing programmed. It might not be music that they've heard before, but I suppose it's just allowing them to trust that it's going to be a good night. and that we're going to have a lot of fun. And yeah, just to kind of give something a go, try something new. So I really enjoyed, actually a lot of audience reactions was like that for those gigs, that they were just astounded by the accordion and what it could do. It sort of feels quite similar to the ethos of the orchestra, which is just really embracing, trying new things and encouraging our audiences to come with us on that journey. Well, thanks so much, Robbie, for joining me in this conversation. It's just been really fascinating to talk to you and share our kind of musical philosophies and ideas about what we do. Thank you for some great conversation.
Thanks for having me. It's been such a joy.